Storytelling is not just entertainment. Storytelling serves as a vital medium for our understanding of ourselves, others, and the world around us. The history of our world is told through stories. Witness accounts documented and passed down through generations ensures that we refrain from making the same mistakes of the past. Stories are a powerful and timeless resource that have been used throughout many millenniums. Fallout uses stories. While we do get to experience and witness many events throughout the games ourselves, there are some stories that we can only hear or read about. This type of passive storytelling is crucial to making the game's world seem full and lived in. That is to say, it makes the game's universe bigger than just the characters currently in it. While quite literally we might just be playing as a 3D character walking through a rendered environment and shooting at other 3D models, the stories told through random terminals make the game seem so much more than it actually is. And while every Fallout iteration has its share of random terminals, holotapes, and the likes, I think Fallout 76's are some of the best in the franchise. And no, I'm not kidding. And one of the holotapes gives us lore fiends something that we don't get to experience or learn about too often in the franchise: what life was like for those that survived the Great War on the surface. Those that didn't make it into a vault. The Survivor Stories are a series of 10 holotapes that can be found in Flatwoods. The Responders' leader of the Flatwood base, a woman named Dasa Ben-Ami, was tired of seeing survivors come and go, leaving their names forgotten. In an attempt to remedy this, she decided to meet with some of the residents of Flatwoods and record what they had to say. And, well, these are their stories. This is the tale of Dasa Ben-Ami and her 10 survivor stories. Dasa's story. Dasa was once a student at the local Vault-Tec University, working on her anthropology doctorate. It was when she was printing her final thesis that the air raid sirens, those denoting the start of the nuclear apocalypse, began to blare. The hope was that her father, a Vault-Tec employee, would be able to protect her and her little brother from the impending attack. But as Dasa's father was only given a +1, Dasa refused to be that one. Despite some protests, Dasa would push her father and brother inside the vault as it closed. Well, what does one do when your only form of shelter is now sealed, and a global nuclear attack is only moments away from wiping away all surface life? For Dasa, this meant going back home to Charleston and accepting that her life would come to an end momentarily. But this turned out to not be the case. Dasa survived. And to likely the dismay of many, a lot of people managed to survive as well. Former Appalachian first responders created a volunteer organization that they called the Responders. The group was dedicated to helping people acclimate and survive their new post-nuclear environment, while also rebuilding the region from what was left over. Hailing from the region's capital city and wanting to help in any way that she could, Dasa joined the Responders almost immediately. Dasa would pour hours, days, weeks, months, and years of hard work into the Responders' altruistic goals. And sometimes, all this effort still wasn't enough. Some folks were resistant to change, and others forged their own paths and factions, unwilling to try and restore the world that was lost. New factions would be born from the ashes of the old world. While some would work in tandem with the Responders and have some overlapping goals, the Charleston Emergency Government or the Brotherhood of Steel for example, others would openly oppose the Responders, creating conflict at every turn. David Thorpe's Raider Gang, the Cutthroats, fit into this category. After a few minor incidents between the two groups, a major conflict known as the Christmas Flood would wipe out thousands of Responders. I plan on making a separate video about this incident, what happened and how it set up the events for Fallout 76, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, even with a significant portion of the Responders now dead, the group managed to persevere, setting up 2 new bases, one at the Morgantown Airport and another in the small town of Flatwoods. Thanks to Dasa's hard work and recovery efforts in the aftermath of the Christmas Flood, she would end up being promoted to the leader of the Flatwoods Responder Division. It's then that she decided, after seeing many people come and go with their stories left untold, to try and preserve the tales and history of Appalachia's earliest survivors. This is Dasa's story.
We call it the Great War now. It's not been long and things have been rough. Welcome to Survivor Stories. I'm Dasa Ben-Ami, a responder. I've been working with the responders for a couple years now. I'm from Charleston originally, so it was easy to join up. What wasn't easy was the work. Rebuilding Appalachia from the rubble while survivors flock to us regularly from all over. So many have come and gone. Their stories untold, their names lost to time. I thought we should preserve this history somehow. I've decided to ask people to record their thoughts, their stories, anything they want to preserve forever. I'll call this series The Survivor Stories. I'll start with me. I was an anthropology PhD student at Vault-Tec University, final year. I was printing my thesis when I heard the sirens. I thought for sure my father, a Vault-Tec employee, could take us all with him, but only 2 reservations came through. I refused to go. With my little brother, he went to the vault. They could not persuade me, though they tried. In the end, I pushed them inside, and that was it. After that, I went back home to Charleston and, well, survived. Eventually, the responders formed, and I signed up right away. It was so hard. The flood was devastating. Relocating to Morgantown Airport and now Flatwoods has been... I remain optimistic. Been with them now for, I guess 2 years. We have big plans. We can do so much to help. Maybe, just maybe, we can rebuild enough to be okay. And in the meantime, I will continue to record stories of survivors when I can. We are your history. This is Dasa Ben-Ami, signing off for now.
Each responder in Flatwoods uses the responder's kiosk in the Flatwoods Tavern to check in and note what the responder will be doing that day. Dasa's last check-in date was November 5th, 2096. Her assignment for that day? Documenting the responder's good deeds. Colonel's story. The first story, if we don't include Dasa's that is that of a young boy named Colonel. At 13 years old by the time of the recording of his first survivor story, Colonel would have been even younger pre-war. At his elementary school, the boy was a bit of a troublemaker, being caught doing bad things time and time again. He cheated on his spelling bee, kicked poor Chip Wilkins in the shins until he cried, and even pushed Rosie McCloy down the stairs. This wasn't all, though. Colonel cut holes in the bottoms of all the gym shorts, he put glue in the cafeteria's mashed potatoes, told Harold Newell that if he ate enough flies a day he would grow strong and have huge muscles, and even replaced the rat cage water bottles with Nuka-Cola at the pet store. Colonel was a misbehaving boy, and like we've seen many times over before, this was likely due to family problems at home. No child is born bad, and Colonel was likely no different. But that's not what his dad would tell him. His dad would always tell Colonel that if he wasn't such a bad and misbehaving kid, then bad things wouldn't happen to him. The start of the Great War only reinforced this idea in Colonel. You see, he believed that all the bad things he had done finally caught up with him. The bombs dropped because Colonel was bad. Devastated by this realization, Colonel decided that he would try to be good from now on. Maybe being good would turn things back to normal. Maybe being good would make his dad come back. This is Colonel's story.
Hi. Dasa asked me if I would talk about, how I got here. She asked everybody, so I said okay. My name's Colonel, and I'm 13 years old. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. The bombs and the messed up people and the cows with 2 heads and all of it. I was bad. Just bad. I cheated on my spelling test. I kicked Chip Wilkins in the shins until he cried. I pushed Rosie McCloy down the stairs. I cut holes in the bottom of all the gym shorts, and I put glue in the mashed potatoes in the cafeteria. I told Harold Newell to eat 10 dead flies a day in order to grow muscles, and I put Nuka-Cola in the rat cage water bottles at the pet store. And, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about everything. Because my dad said if I wasn't this way, the bad things wouldn't happen. I haven't seen Daddy since the bombs, and I guess he left because of that, too. It's okay. I'm trying to be good now, though. I'm not old enough to be a volunteer, but Dasa said I could help collect food and water, so I'm getting better, I promise. And, Daddy, if you're listening, I promise I won't be bad anymore, so you can come back now. Okay? Okay. Bye.
A note addressed to his father can be found in the Flatwoods meeting hall. It reads, "Daddy, if you read this, I am now staying in the bell tower at the church. I have cereal and games and a sleeping bag for us both. I will be waiting. I love you, Colonel." 1 month later, another responder, Reverend Delbert Winters, told Colonel to write another letter to his father. While Winters was likely aware that it would never be delivered, he knew that writing things down was a good coping mechanism. In the second letter, titled "I Miss You, Dad," Colonel writes, "Dear Dad, I wrote you a letter last month, and Delbert asked me to write you another letter. He said it will find you. I just wanted to say that I am doing okay. Everybody is taking care of me. I miss you." Colonel's story is one of the saddest things in Fallout, but it's not quite done yet. We'll come back to Colonel later. Kesha's story. Next is Kesha McDermott. Kesha was the acting program coordinator for a statewide high school science fair being held in Watoga. The theme was the future of energy. Later that day, the bombs would drop. In the aftermath of the Great War, Kesha found herself taking care of a group of newly orphaned high school students, taking shelter in a rundown house. Kesha, like many others, would find themselves facing the challenges that the new world brought, scavenging for food that wasn't too irradiated, and fighting off other survivors that also wanted food that wasn't too irradiated. After one particular scavenging run, Kesha came back to her new family with a broken radio. After spending some time soldering new circuitry and such, she managed to tune the old thing into a broadcast from a group that called themselves the Responders. Promising shelter, survival, and community, Kesha and the kids would opt to make their trek to Flatwoods and join the Responders. The journey was mostly uneventful outside of the group running into a small gang of raiders that stole the food and water they were currently carrying. Outside of that, no further hiccups. Kesha and the kids were now in Flatwoods, and it was everything and more that they could have ever asked for. Guaranteed safety at last. But there was one problem. The Responders' water supply, taken from a nearby river, was heavily contaminated. But for a science whiz like Mrs. McDermott, this problem would soon be solved. With time, care, and science, Flatwoods would have safe, drinkable water in no time. This is Kesha's story.
Dasa has asked us all to document our stories for posterity, you know. It seems like a fine idea. So, hi, I am Kesha McDermott. When the bombs fell, I was in Watoga, coordinating a statewide science fair for that year's high school kids. And the theme was the future of energy. After the bombs, everything was pretty chaotic. Scavenging for food and fighting off rabid survivors. Oh, it was just a bad time all around. I found a couple of surviving kids from the high school whose parents didn't make it, and we holed up in a house in town for a while. After a bit, I was able to solder the circuitry in an old radio, and we tuned in to a broadcast from the Responders. Oh, we were overjoyed. The trip from Watoga to Flatwoods, it was rough, mind you. The kids and I ran into a group of assholes in the mountains who stole our food and water. I can't tell you how happy I was to find the responders in Flatwoods. Tents for everyone, open kitchens, medical supplies, protection. We were safe. They had a problem, though. Their water sources were contaminated heavily. People were boiling water, but not long enough to make it safe. So, I stepped up and I said, I'll build a testing kit to monitor the contamination, and I will teach folks how to properly boil water. And I did. The world is getting better, but slowly. We need to make sure it doesn't relapse, too. It's going to take time and care, that's all. Well, time, care, and science.
Kesha's corpse can be found lying next to the Flatwoods River. She last checked in at the responders' kiosk on October 25th, 2096, tasked with conducting ongoing hydrology experiments. Miguel's story. Next is Miguel Caldera. I believe I've mentioned him before in a past video. Prior to the Great War, Miguel was a programmer working for Vault-Tec, a cog in the machine that is American capitalism. But Miguel longed for a life that was better than sitting in an office and staring at a terminal all day. Miguel wanted more. He wanted to be able to leave Vault-Tec and hike the Appalachian woods every day. Office life was not for him. And so, one autumn morning, the monkey's paw curled and Miguel got his wish to escape the monotonous life of office work. At first, Miguel was terrified of the new world that he had been plunged into. He didn't have a vault to keep him safe, so he set up a small, little campsite in the woods. He reprogrammed a protectron that would guard him while he slept, and eventually, as he was feeling the pangs of loneliness, the responders found him. While out hunting for rabbits, Dasa came upon a really nice campsite. This was, of course, Miguel's campsite. Miguel would quickly become a responder after acing their survival training program, and, funnily enough, it would be Miguel's past programming expertise that would make him invaluable to the group. Miguel would be the one to program all the training terminals and responder robots found at all responders' bases and outposts. Miguel went from being one of thousands of Vault-Tec programmers, mindlessly plucking away at code all day, to a crucial member of a group that was dedicated to helping people. He was one of the few people that came out better thanks to the Great War. And while he does acknowledge that the whole event was awful, he believes it's okay to make the best of the shitty situation. Through loss and hardship, Miguel managed to find peace and happiness. This is Miguel's story.
Hello, person in the distant future. Dasa told us these tapes would be used as historical records someday. Pretty nifty. So, my name is Miguel Caldera. Let's see, my story begins in an office. I used to be a programmer at Vault-Tec, one of many. Nobody special, you see. And that's okay. I used to stare out that window by the coffee machine and think, shucks, I wish I could leave this job and hike in the woods every day. I dream about walking the Appalachian Trail, setting up camp wherever I liked, and traveling with close friends. The dreams kept me going. And, well, when the bombs fell, I was terrified, just like anybody else. I wasn't in a vault, so I just, I had to figure it all out too. The responders found me. I had a little campsite, some supplies. I hacked a protectron to guard me while I slept, but I miss people. I did. It's been alright, the apocalypse and all. I know that seems weird, but I have freedom now. I can actually help people. I even met somebody. A volunteer who delivers supplies. Imagine that, right? Even when you think everything is over, it's not. It goes on. I mean, it's awful too. Don't get me wrong. All the people dead and hurt, But those are things beyond my control. So, I'm making the best of it. These days, I'm important. People treat me like I matter because, well, there's so few of us. We can't afford to think otherwise. So for all you future people, just know that we lived through something horrible, but we did it. Somehow, we're alive. And if you're hearing this, then, well, I guess at least some of us made it, right? So hey, chin up, kiddo. You'll be okay. Okay?
Both Miguel and his lover, Gary Wilkins, would be transferred to the Morgantown Airport Base, where he would teach advanced survival training classes, as well as continue his other programming duties. But Miguel's hopeful and optimistic demeanor would change when Gary was killed in a scorched attack. After burying his partner in the nearby responder graveyard, Miguel would leave a note for the leader of the responders, Maria Chavez, asking, "What's the point with any of this if we can't even protect ourselves?" Miguel's last check-in was at the Morgantown Airport on June 15, 2096. His corpse can be found at a makeshift camp not too far from the airport. In a final diary entry, Miguel reflects on his life, writing, "I should have signed up for the Vault Tech stuff, but the thought of being in a tin can for 100 years was too terrifying. But here it is. Every day more of us die. I haven't seen a refugee in too long. If I'm going to get ripped to shreds, I'm going to do it with a pot of Delbert's chili, in the woods, and under the beautiful stars." And that is exactly what he did. Scott's story. The next is that of nurse Scott Shepard, and his story provides some much-needed comic relief from some of these sad stories. Scott Shepard was, as you may have guessed already, a nurse before the war. One day, while he was grilling some burgers with his dog Perry in his yard, he heard some rustling from the nearby bushes and a zapping noise. All of a sudden, Scott began to feel lightheaded and collapsed to the ground. Those burgers would for sure be well done. The next thing Scott can remember is waking up and seeing something small running back into the bushes with his dog giving chase. When he got up and found his dog, it had a clump of green skin in its mouth, though even Scott admits that it could have been moss. A truly peculiar story. And although it would bother Scott, nothing afterwards seemed out of the ordinary. That is until exactly 9 days and 19 hours later, the bombs fell. This would be the smoking gun, and allow Scott to piece together everything. Scott had finally figured everything out. He knew the reason why the Great War actually happened, and the reason was aliens. Scott believed that aliens planned the whole thing. Life on Earth was one big playground and experiment to these aliens. Every thought, every spoken word, planned. This is the planned story of Scott Shepard.
Responder Dasa gave me some supplies in exchange for my survivor story, so... Hi, my name is Scott Shepard, and things are going all right. I was a nurse before the war, and I guess nothing much has changed. I just work for the responders now, and I don't get paid. The government is basically the same now as it was years ago. Wrecked, disorganized, cannot be trusted. Everyone knows this. You want to know why the war actually happened? Aliens. You think I'm joking? Listen, now right before everything went to hell, I saw them. I was grilling hamburgers out in the yard with my dog, and I heard rustling from the bushes and a zapping noise. Next thing I know, I'm lightheaded, and I felt myself falling to the ground, and I didn't even have a lot to drink. I woke up, and I saw some little thing run into the bushes with my dog following it, and I knew something was wrong. I found my dog later with a clump of green skin in his mouth. Green, like moss or something. The bombs fell almost 10 days later. 9 days, 19 hours to be exact. That's 235 hours precisely. You know what that is, right? That's right. The atomic number of the fissile isotope of uranium. They had a plan from the very beginning. Why would they come after me first? Scott Shepard, the nurse. Well, good question. I'm glad you asked. They have our blood. They knew which ones of us would survive. This is one big experiment to them. This whole thing was staged. Our lives, our thoughts, everything was designed for us, just like this conversation. Every word I'm saying. Planned. Time to wake up, Appalachia. Find the ones holding the strings and cut the cords.
Scott last checked in at the Flatwoods Outpost on March 15, 2096, with the goal of studying the reasons why. Scott's corpse can be found in his home at 2 Church Road. He is found carrying a torn-up to-do list. It reads, "Remember, set up a trap for the you-know-whos and use the holotape to try and record their noises at night. Get a lock for the secret stash by the Brahmin tubs behind the house. Get a bigger gun, or more guns, or both. Try to tame a wild dog or giant rat. Rest in peace, Perry, you sweet old boy." Delbert's story. Next is Reverend Delbert Winter's story. Delbert Winters has lived in Flatwoods his whole life. As a man of faith, Delbert committed his life to doing good things in the name of the Lord, so that by the time rapture came, he would be one of many to rise from the shackles of earth and meet the Lord in the great heavens above. So, when the Great War happened and hellfire was raining from the sky, Delbert believed that it was time. Rapture was upon us. However, when the dust settled, Delbert realized he was still on earth. He was not taken to the heavens above. This realization haunted him, causing him to question his own faith. He had devoted so much of his life to the Lord, and was met with silence. Had the Lord not come, or alternatively, was Delbert not good enough? He questioned his past deeds. Sure, he had killed during his time in the military, but to him, that was justified. What had Delbert done to deserve this fate? To pass time and remain calm, Delbert would write, pray, and cook. Cooking would actually help him a lot. Where life seemed overwhelming and complicated, cooking was simple. When the responders expanded to Flatwoods in February 2083, he welcomed them with open arms, volunteering for the group and offering his church as an outpost. Delbert would take on multiple roles with the responders. He ran the town's book club, hosted nightly survivors guilt meetings, took care of the town's young adults and kids, and became the sort of head chef for the Flatwoods responders, cooking them meals each day. Cooking gave Delbert the much-needed meaning for his life, and although Delbert would continue to struggle with his faith, with the responders, he found a new purpose. This is Delbert's story.
Reverend Delbert Winters here, born and raised in this very town. Lent my own church to the responders for their outpost here, and you're welcome. The responders are on a true mission, you see, helping folks through thick and thin, till the heavens open up again and take us all up anyways. When this all happened, I figured like most it was time. This was the end, but it wasn't, was it? We're still here. At first, I thought it was a mistake, that we was missed, forgotten. Maybe we did some wrongs. Didn't give enough to charity, maybe. Didn't praise his name, even in the worst of times. Maybe thought some things that ought not to have been thought. So I asked him. I asked how? Why? I fought your wars on Earth. I'm ready to fight them up there by your side. Then, in my despair, I saw some survivors eating raw rat carcass behind a dumpster. You ought to cook that first, I warned them. Seemed obvious. We tried but got sick, they said, covered in their own filth. I realized right then and there that I was being tasked. From then on, I built kitchens, cooked good food, fed anyone who walked up with an empty belly, and I was thankful for my task in life. Thankful. Next time hell or high water land at my stoop, I'll be swept clear away with it. But until then, let's share a home-cooked meal together, all right?
Although Delbert's corpse can be found in his trailer, his legacy lives on through food. Many of his food and drink recipes can be found throughout Appalachia. Even traveling chef Yasmin Chowdhury credits Delbert for inspiring her to travel to Appalachia. Delbert last checked in on July 24th, 2096. Sophie's story. Next is the story of Sophie Yates. This one is actually pretty heavy, and it might make you a bit uncomfortable to hear about. If you want to skip or click off, now would be the time to do so. I'll put a time on the screen that you can skip to. Not much is actually known about Sophie pre-war. Post-war, however, we do know about that, and it's tragic. Sophie wasn't too old by the time of the Great War. Based on her testimonial through the survivor stories, it would seem that she and her parents were grocery shopping at the nearby Super Duper Mart when the Great War happened. And while Sophie would survive, her parents wouldn't be so lucky. For months, Sophie would survive alone with no help in the grocery store, eating old cat food just to stay alive. Because of this, Sophie is perpetually mad. Mad that the Great War happened, mad that her parents left her on this dumb planet, mad that nobody came, mad that no one helped her. These strong emotions laid the foundation for her approach to life now. Do things yourself, because nobody helps anymore. And despite Sophie volunteering for the responders, her attitude towards the group is uncharacteristic of a typical responder. She knows that too. Instead, she uses her position as a responder to ward off people from joining. In a final confession, Sophie admits to killing Reverend Winters after he stopped her from leaving Flatwoods and the responders. This is Sophie's story.
Is this thing on? Great. Hello, survivors of this garbage dump. I'm Sophie, and this is my stupid survivor story. This dumb shit go. Oh yeah. Before the bombs, I was a librarian, and now I can read everything all the time. Whee! Look at me! I'm lucky. Wait, no. Maybe I was one of those farmers who prepared for the end times. Some sort of religious thing. Yeah, that's right. No, I got it. I was a sweet little kid and lived off some cat food containers in a super duper mart for months near my parents' rotting carcasses. Nobody came. Nobody. I learned how to deal. You should too. The responders are a joke. Nobody helps anybody anymore. Get a grip. If you're not a total idiot, you'll get out of this dump before the responders get you killed. Leave the sick behind. You're better off. Trust me. Whiny babies can stay here and play make-believe, but anyone with half a brain will go up to the mountains and drop the dead weight. Delbert already tried to stop me. Sorry to say nobody will be around to teach you how to eat shit now, Flatwoods. Bye, suckers. Love always, Sophie.
Sophie's corpse can be found on her front porch. A blood spatter emanates from her head, and a pipe pistol can be found next to her. Her farewell was not only directed to Flatwoods. Sophie was obviously troubled. After being left alone in a strange new world, with her parents' rotting corpses, something inside of her broke. She was put in a situation that no one could ever begin to imagine in their worst nightmares. It deeply affected her. And so when she sees a group of survivors willing to aid and help others, instead of wanting to provide the help that no one could offer her, she grows resentful. Why are others worthy of aid and she wasn't? Why was a little girl left alone in a super duper mart with no one to help her? Her survivor story was a cry for help, and once again, no one was there to provide it. Her last check-in was on July 24th, 2096, where she was supposed to go to Delbert Winter's home for a volunteer training class. Tabitha's story. Pre-war, Tabitha was struggling with chem addiction. Her condition was so bad that she believed that the events during the Great War and many years after were actually part of an extremely vivid trip. And every time she thought she was coming down from her high, she would manage to find more chems, and the cycle would begin over again. Not once did she suspect the mutated fauna and destroyed infrastructure was her reality. To her, all the sights and monstrosities that she was seeing were due to the chems. During this prolonged high, Tabitha would unknowingly join up with the raiders of the Savage Divide, and in a chem-addled haze, she would hurt people. It wasn't until she ran into a doctor with the responders that she would get the help she so desperately needed. The responders took Tabitha in and provided her with a treatment plan consisting of taking Addictol semi-regularly. Chem addiction plagued Tabitha for years. This is Tabitha's story.
Just talking to this? Oh, yeah, am I loud enough? Okay. Hi. What do you want me to say exactly?
Mostly blood-free.
Yeah, so just talk about how you got here and maybe a little bit about your life. This is a historic document. Go ahead, Tabitha. Okay, so, well, thanks. Okay. I've been sober for 9 days. I got here 9 days ago. My name is Tabitha. And this is my story. I just found out about everything. The war, the bombs, I just realized this was, really happening. For years, I thought the chems were playing tricks with my mind, hurting my brain. Thought it was the worst trip ever. Every time I'd come out of my haze long enough to look for food, I'd find more chems and, well, I kept going. And I kept seeing madness. Look, I would have been wandering around fighting giant rats and eating garbage if not for the responders. They're good folks. That doc in the church, got me some meds that are helping out a lot. And they have group therapy meetings, and it's good. I think it's helping. But listen, you should avoid the mountains. They'll just get you mixed up. Get you doing things you don't want to do. Hurting people mostly. And there are so many chems up there. I spent too long there and I hurt people. I couldn't think right. I couldn't. Oh, it's okay, Tabitha. Remember what we said in the group? Take your Addictol and rest and things will be okay soon. It's okay. We're here for you. Yeah, I'm taking it. When I feel better, I'm going out west, though. Getting out of this place. Getting away from the chems, all of this. I feel better every day, but, years of chems, years of rads, years of sleeping in the muck. It adds up. Yeah. I'm gonna get back to sleep now, okay? Okay. Thanks for sharing your story, Tabitha. Get some sleep. You'll be okay. You're safe now.
A note by Tabitha titled "Sorry" can be found in the responders' meeting hall on a chalkboard with the words "Remember them" scrawled on it. The note lists several names, each with an apology from Tabitha afterwards. It would seem that the struggling woman had wronged many people in her life. Tabitha's corpse cannot be found in-game. I hope what this means is that Tabitha did manage to head out west and find some peace elsewhere. Away from the chems, away from the horrors of her past. Peace at last. Willie's story. The next story is that of Willie May. Willie May was a grandmother to several grandchildren prior to the Great War. For 20 years, Willie would buy tickets to the Watauga Times Atomic Lottery, and for 19 years, 11 months, she would lose that lottery. Tough odds, I can't blame you. Almost impossible to win the lottery. It was in October 2077 that she struck the jackpot, though. The jackpot being a 10-year supply of Blamco mac and cheese, Salisbury steak, and Nuka-Cola. Talk about great timing, can't be mad about that. In the days leading up to the Great War, her husband Frank went missing. Frank worked in one of the local mines, and one day some tremors were felt in the region, and Frank never returned home. But for old Willie May, oddly enough, that was fine. She didn't really like him anyway. She expected to live through a peaceful retirement consisting of watching her programs and taking care of her grandchildren while whittling away through her newly won food stockpile. It sounds like a great way to pass time, to be honest. What she certainly didn't anticipate was total nuclear annihilation instead. And although she will never be able to confirm this, deep down she knows that her grandchildren made it into a vault. She wouldn't have to worry about their safety. And so Willie May spent her new post-apocalyptic life just living. She didn't need to scavenge for food, though Toga Times Lottery ensured that. Unfortunately though, the 10-year supply only lasted 8. What can you do? But by the time her supply did run out, she heard a responder's radio broadcast and sought them for help. This is Willie May's story.
I pressed the button. Hush! I think it's recording now. Shush! Hello? Hello there? Oh, I think it's working. I hate these things. This is Willie May, and I was asked to talk a bit about my life since the war to help educate future children someday. I think that's nice. I thought I'd just watch my programs and entertain the grandkids in my retirement, but that didn't turn out to be the case. I'm just glad they all made it to the vault in time, you see. When I saw it in a dream, I knew my prayers were answered. My husband Frank used to work in the mines. Just a bit before the war, there was news of tremors, and he didn't come home. I don't know what happened to him or why he never came home for sure. And between you and me, I'm fine with that. Since the war, I've just read my old newspapers and listened to music. It's very peaceful for once, which is just right nice by me. Ever hear of the Watoga Times Atomic Lottery? The winner got 10 years worth of Blamco mac and cheese, Salisbury steak, and Nuka-Cola, of course. I played that lottery for 20 years, and I finally won the month before the war. It lasted only 8 years, though. But who can you complain to? By the time it ran out, I had heard the responders' radio broadcast, so I went out to find them and get supplies. Bless their hearts. Well, I'm going home now. For a bit anyways. How do I turn this thing off? Oh, blast these things. Not this button. Not this one. Oh, here it is.
Willie's corpse can be found outside of her home in Flatwoods. She was never a member of the responders, so the details surrounding her fate are unknown. Not that anyone else's is much clearer, of course. Colonel's story. I mentioned it before, but Colonel's story doesn't quite end yet. A second survivor story was recorded for Colonel, but this time it was done 10 years later. 5 years after the original story was recorded, Dasa deemed Colonel finally old enough to join the responders. His mission? To help orphaned kids. Colonel's job is to make sure they're safe, protected, trained, and overall just act like a big brother. And so for another 5 years, that's exactly what he did, until they started to find fewer and fewer people. By the time of Colonel's second survivor story, things in Appalachia were starting to get worse and worse. And while Colonel obviously didn't know this at the time, this was likely due to the Appalachian Enclave's mission of raising the region's DEFCON status, the chaotic nature of David Thorpe's cutthroats, and the Brotherhood's distrust of civilian organizations. But I digress. As Colonel grew older, he gained new perspective on life, and more specifically, his father's supposed abandonment. In a final address to his dad, Colonel writes, "I forgive you, Dad. I get it now. Taking care of kids is hard, and it was too hard for you. You were young, and it was just too much. I get it, I do. I'm an adult now too, and, well, I took a long time to understand why you did it. I'm not mad though. But I'm going to do the opposite of what you did. I'm going to find kids and make sure they're okay. I love you, I forgive you, but you don't need to come home anymore. Colonel grew into the man that his father wasn't. This is Responder Colonel's story.
Boy, it's been like 10 years since I did one of these. Dasa said she lost my original one, though. Bummer. My name is Colonel, so, hey, hi. Let's see. Bombs fell when I was a kid. My dad died in the war, so this is all pretty normal. My story is, I guess, boring. So Dasa found me when I was 13 or so. She brought me the responders. They taught me everything. I became a volunteer. It was great. For the past 5 years, I've been a responder myself. I help kids who lost their families. I get them safe, trained. Just act like a big brother. Every year we find fewer people, though, so... I don't know. Things are not good out there. Just getting simple food and water is tough. And the Brotherhood, well, we thought that would be different. We thought everything would be different, though. So anyway, maybe in 10 years, Dasa will ask me to do another one of these survivor stories. Till then, peace, Appalachia.
Colonel's corpse can be found on the front porch of a red house in Flatwoods. He lays next to the corpse of a raider, finally indicating just what might have happened to the responders of Flatwoods. Gary's story. I know I said that there are only 10 survivor stories, and we just went over the 10th with Colonel's second story, but there's actually an 11th that was cut from the final release of Fallout 76, and that is of volunteer responder Gary Wilkins. Gary the Dragon Wilkins was a member of the Pioneer Scouts in the years leading up to the Great War. Like me, Gary was a major gamer. He even had the highest score for Red Menace on the East Coast. He was into comics and had a full Grognak the Barbarian costume. Post-war, Gary took on a volunteering position with the responders, tasked with ferrying supplies between their two primary outposts, the Morgantown Airport and the town of Flatwoods. It was during one of these supply runs that Gary met a man named Miguel Caldera. The pair quickly grew smitten with one another, with Miguel occasionally accompanying Gary on his supply routes. During no trek in particular, Gary recorded his survivor story. This is Gary's story.
Dasa asked me to make a recording about my life since the bombs or something, for history. I'm on my way to Morgantown to take some food supplies up there. I do this once a month or so to just make sure everything's okay, Mostly, though, I do it because I get to spend a bit of time with the other responders. I'm just a volunteer right now, but, well, one day I get to also spend some time with Miguel, who's a brilliant programmer. He built a lot of the robots before and after the war. Excuse me. Where was I? Ah, yes, Miguel. The dreamboat. Sure, it's chaotic and the end of the world and all that, but you can't plan love, right? So, in the meantime, I walk from the airport to Flatwoods delivering supplies. Sometimes Miguel comes with me. Those are the best times. I hope I'll get transferred up there soon. They said after I become a full responder, but becoming a responder is hard. Miguel made the kiosk system to train volunteers, and he hopes to add on to it so volunteers can become responders one day. Until then, I just carry the supplies. I don't know if it's particularly important, but I hope it is. Hang on. Before the bombs fell, I just played a lot of games. Red Menace? I have the highest score on the East Coast, I think. Atomic Command, too. I also read every comic I can find. Grognak is, of course, my favorite. I used to have a full Grognak outfit, too, even a real axe. I like to think of myself as Grognak sometimes, cutting through the hordes. Miguel would be the man-to-man, and together we would be unstoppable. I'm originally from Charleston, but, well, my home was probably destroyed. I don't want to go back. Even for my axe, it's not worth it. Maybe one of Miguel's robots can fetch it for me someday. Or maybe we can go there together like Grognak and Man-to-Man. Anyway, it's not so bad out here if you just pretend you're Grognak. Remember, kids, be a hero and not a minion of the Mansaurian.
Eventually, Gary would be promoted to a fully fledged responder, and he and Miguel would be transferred to the Morgantown airport full-time. And as mentioned previously, Gary would be killed in a scorched attack, prompting Miguel to leave Morgantown for good. And that is the tale of Dasa Ben-Ami and her 11 survivor stories. Dasa wanted to find a way to preserve the Flatwoods residents' history. Her holotape series dubbed The Survivor Stories was her way to do just that. And based on the events of Fallout 76, and the fact that the Vault Dweller can seek out these tapes is proof that Dasa's efforts were not in vain. Although it would seem that the responders of Flatwoods were wiped out by the Cutthroat Raider Gang, their stories, troubles, pain and hardships, accomplishments, tenacity and hopefulness, their history, would live on through the survivor stories. Thank you for listening. That is all from me today, folks. If you liked the video, be sure to share and subscribe. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
Flatwoods had better days. Now everything cattywampus or it'll kill you. Now, I ain't no cussin' lady. But damn if God had just let a bomb fall on my head. Jesus, just let me die.